Okay, here it is, Law, the first supplemental episode for an episode that was already produced. This, I'm kind of like, why did this one have to come for this system specific? But the Atari. So we did catch some flack a little bit, but again, it's our opinions on stuff, and we might have been shifting a little bit too negative on the Atari. So we had to bring some other experts in here. We have some special guests today. Super excited about having them here, and we're gonna kind of be on both sides. It's not that I hate Atari. If we start getting into like the later 7800s and stuff, I like that. But it was those iterations before, just stab me. But there are people that we have some guest people that are have a great love for this system. So I'm super excited about having them here. I want to thank them, and I'm gonna throw it over to this guy over there. Who you got? Yep, it's that one.
There's no one over on this side.
Yeah,
that's me.
Oh, okay. Oh, you talking about me?
Yep.
What's up, everybody? It's Wolf here, and yes, I agree. It's our opinions are our opinions, right? But and especially of both of us, I was probably the most negative, without a doubt, and I grew up on, for the most part, the Atari systems. Even though we kind of vacillated more towards the ColecoVision in my household. And even before that, I didn't want to get into it in the last episode, we had an Odyssey, which was even worse. It's, I remember my father getting it because it was a gray system. And in our basement, we had a gray room. So my mom let my dad buy it because it matched the rug and the furniture.
Is that like when you date a girl and she has red hair and then the drapes don't match the carpet, so you got to make sure. Wait, that's not what we were talking. We weren't talking about that. Sorry, derailed. Let me pull that back. Sorry. We do it one shot.
Yeah. So anyway, this should be cool because I think we're gonna get a little bit more balance to the force. I know JC, is definitely grew up in the same time period as I did. I know he's a big time Atari player, and I know Eric has a love for Atari. So it'll be nice to get some positive viewpoints, and then, I'll continue to bang away my thoughts. My thoughts are my thoughts, and I'm not going to change my opinion. So with that being said, let's introduce our guests, starting, I guess, in my top left.
Now that's the interesting part. Your top left. Who is it? Your top left?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's got the Greek letters on his shirt.
Yeah,
and
we can't see you. Do you want to be seen or do you not want to be seen? That's what I'm trying to find out right now.
We're seen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My name is JC Hill. I am the mastermind behind Tracade, friend of these two guys that run this awesome show about a lot of things that we've talked about for countless hours, day and night. And it's just good to see y'all show up and running, man. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Nice.
Great to have you here, JC.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And who do we have as our last? And we won't say. Here's what it is. He's going to come in like Vanilla Ice, and any problems that we have, he is going to solve it.
That's right. That's right. No, Eric Ostrom, gamer all my life, good friend Daniel Wolf and Larson, and love retro gaming. I don't have huge collections or anything like that, but I emulate everything and play everything. So
you're a gamer. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
And that's what this show is about.
And I love this show.
Gamers.
So honored to be here.
Nice. Well, thanks. Yeah, no, this is one of those ones that as soon as we were done and we did the live stream and we were catching a little bit of just back and forth, it was like, you know what, now's a perfect time to strike while the iron is hot, and just let's just have another conversation. I wanted to bring one of you on here anyways, and then it just didn't work out, so this is even better. So yeah. So you guys saw the episode, right? So you know where Wolf and I kind of sit, and some of it is like sitting on the toilet. But I mean, we wanted to kind of get your opinion, your history, things that you remember, maybe some of the games, maybe even some of the games we talked about that you want to, put the shields up and say, "Hold up, buddy." So
Yeah.
why don't we go ahead and start with JC and let you start talking about how much you love ET. Oh wait.
Well, let's just say we won't start with ET at all.
He had to hang the joystick.
I love it.
We
So
won't
good.
start with ET at all, okay? Yeah, my short story on this is a wonderful Christmas morning that happened to be a Sunday, and I walk out and I see this nice little box. This box has an Atari 2600 in it. This Atari 2600 stops me from having to go to the arcade every time we go to the mall. We leave church early that day on purpose so that my very smart auntie can hook up my Atari 2600. I play Pac-Man. I don't care that Pac-Man doesn't have dots and it has its dashes. It really doesn't bother me at all.
That's Morse code.
Right.
Yeah, that's code for terrible. But anyways, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Understand that at that time for me, these were things that there's no way in the world in my little town of Fort Valley, whatever, would have anything close to it. There were no arcades in any building. There was no arcade in a Pizza Hut. Why? Because we didn't have a Pizza Hut. It was just that simple. And so to be able to have this very awkward controller where the button is on the left-hand side, I mean, you don't worry about it. We just played. This was one of these controllers that I wore this stick out so much that the plastic came off the top of it. It was just a little tube that hung there because I had calluses on your fingers from trying to play all of these great games that decided you needed to run by doing this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This was my entire joy. This was everything that I needed it to be. I had a wastebasket with Atari games in it. It was just a bunch of them. So it was just one of those things where, hey, the friends come over, you dump the wastebasket out and you pull whatever you can, you put it in there and we're playing.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like where ours usually was, in the wastebasket.
I knew that was coming.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going, JC.
Bum.
Go ahead. That was just a
So-
T-ball swing right there.
So definitely understand, despite the Space Invaders, despite the Donkey Kongs, I'm a Yars Revenge, a Vanguard fan. Of course, boxing, super sports football, real sports football, super challenge football, things of that nature. All of those games meant everything to me. This was my start into everything. Now, to get this out of the way, I never purchased ET. I had this crazy friend down the street that decided this game needed to be bought so that he'd have the new game on the street. And he brought it over and he put it in there and we just kind of looked at it. But there was another game very similar to that called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Similar screens, walking from here to there. No real maps to try to figure out what edges or what points to grab these artifacts from. That was life.
Pain.
Understand, that's all we had. We had that and one Eclipse. That was it. That's all I got, man. We'll expound a little bit further. That's the short story. We won't even go into the pitfall yet, which kind of just puts to shame all of the negative talk that I kind of heard that y'all had.
Yeah, like the reverse pitfall. Actually, the saving grace is pitfall. Figure that one out.
Well, there was Mega Mania. That was a very good one. We didn't have our Galagos, and don't let me forget one of the best co-op games you could ever have on a system named Combat.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Combat gave us.
Combat was great.
Yeah, me and my son still play Combat to this day. It's just that interesting game with the quirk where I can shoot through the screen and hit him on the backside of behind the barrier. I mean, come on. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Hey, Centipede. This list is too long, man. I don't know how
It
far
can never
we
be
go
too long.
this rabbit hole, man. Enduro. Pole position. We'll just keep riding. That's what it is. I get the ColecoVision situation. You know, to me, ColecoVision, the mash over, and I'm not talking about this, you know, crazy Donkey Kong that's in reverse order on Atari. You know, we're not even going to go there.
They were just trying to spice it up, is what it was. They were like,
Hey,
Donkey Kong's just too easy in arcade. Let's do it backwards.
Hey, man. But it was to me it was the epitome of a system that learned how to use that pixel, one square, and map that square in as many different ways as it could, and really just challenge everyone who watched it into being able to do something very simple with a button and a stick. You did everything with it. Now, of course, we didn't have the paddles that you hung around your head, you know, but by that time, you know, Pong and you know things of that nature, we were kind of done with that because a lot of us had the old Pong machine. So it was you know that was okay.
Kaboom.
Oh.
Yeah, and Carnival. I mean, you know
Yep.
things of that nature. Yeah, but it was what we needed. It was what we needed at that time. There was nothing else there. You know, a lot of us weren't fortunate enough to know what was going on in the background with Atari at that point, and the wars they were fighting, and we didn't care. I like you, Wolf, had an Odyssey 2 when my Atari broke on me, and so that was just to bide my time to get my next Atari.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's just sticking in the Atari 2600 area. You know, we're not going to go to the 5200 where my Pac-Man got a little better.
Right.
You know, 7800 where, you know, we got my Miss Pac-Man coming in there having a little bit more fun with it with board changes and things of that nature. I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Jr. and all that too.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't even forget those sounds.
Yeah.
You know.
So, and Eric, you're quite a bit younger than us. So the fact that you love this system so much, I find it fascinating, and I want to hear how I do. I think you have a unique perspective that I like to learn, and so I want to understand. I'm not totally closed off to having my eyes opened. I just remember how it was for me, and then when I've gone back, it hasn't transferred well like some other of my retro consoles. So why don't you go and give us a little bit of a blurb on what you got going on?
Okay, so I mean, my opinion's a little bit biased just because of my experience with the Atari was different. So yeah, I'm younger. I don't know how much younger, but younger, and but my father loved the Atari, and he had every version of it, and this was right at release. And also understand that my father was a huge collector of vinyl. And back in those days, he would go vinyl hunting. And what would happen is a lot of the record shops he would go to would also have Atari games. And then it just became a thing where we would go Atari game hunting also. And back then, you know, no one really cared about licenses or copyrights or anything like that. So basically, anyone could make an Atari game, and you would find ones with super weird shaped cartridges that didn't make any sense. So that became a thing. And then, you know, I was still really young, but you know, used to fall asleep to the bleeps and bloops that the Atari would make as my father was playing it and stuff like that. And then I got old enough to get involved in the gaming side of it and then start playing the games. But it wasn't, I mean, I had a 2600, a personal 2600, the wood grain one that Wolf has. I had that one. Um, and then, you know, I used to like the games. There was a game called Haunted House that I really liked.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was super good.
Yes.
There was a game called There was Star Wars. I liked the Star Wars game. There was Defender, which was good. I mean, those were some of the games. I watched the first episode of the Atari Law. Um, I wanted to just mention a couple things about Sword Quest because totally disagree. Sword Quest is a great game, but so there were supposed to be four of them, but they only released three. I don't know if you guys mentioned that in the episode. Did you guys mention
I
that?
think we did. I think we
Yeah.
did. Yeah, we did.
So they were all called Sword Quest, but the first one was Earth World, and it was based on like the Western Zodiac, and then they had Fire World, which was based on chakras, and then they had Waterworld, which was
Yep.
based on I Ching, and then they
Not
were
the Kevin
supposed to have
Costner one, right? It wasn't based on that because that was a terrible
no,
movie. All
yeah,
right.
and then they were supposed to have Airworld, but Airworld never got released. However, there are incomplete versions that you can find. And you can try to play them, and I guess they kind of work. Anyway, but the only reason those games, I mean, the Fireworld was really fun. Waterworld was pretty fun. The original one wasn't so great, but they did make improvements with every subsequent release, and they did become more fun, which was cool. My dad was heavily involved in the original contest that was associated with it,
Oh yeah.
and went to 2 of the events for it. So that was super cool. Um, didn't win anything, but it was still really cool. Anyway, so and then later on he wanted to expand the Atari, and so he got a keyboard, and then he got the tape deck reader,
Oh yeah.
and started to play things like Blue Max, which was like a flying game. But then where it really, really became a thing for me was uh so I would go to arcades as a kid and stuff like that, but then my father would invite a bunch of friends over, and they were obsessed with this game called Star Raider.
All right.
And Star Raider was on the 5200,
Hmm.
and it was a game that you needed 2 people to really play effectively, because you needed someone to navigate for you using the keyboard, and then you needed someone to fight for you and use the joystick.
Okay.
And so it was like you were both in this one spaceship, and you had to fly around this grid map, and you had to kill these aliens and stuff. And they would stay up all weekend, Friday night, and wouldn't sleep until Sunday because they were playing this game and just obsessed with it. And then there was another game called Wizards and Warriors, which was super good, and I got really, really good at that game. Loved that game. Combat was a great game. I love the bouncing bullets. I love the reverse, being able to hit people from the other side. There was the helicopter level, which was really fun. Um, anyway, so that's where I'm coming from, and that's why my opinion's a little bit biased. But also, my age makes it weird because I had an NES first, and then I went back and had an Atari. But the reason why I liked the Atari was I could get a game for $1,
Yep.
and I could go and like hunt for weird games that I'd never heard of, and find them in like a record shop when my father was there, and then I could throw that in. Maybe it would be fun, maybe it would be a piece of crap. But I can't disagree with you guys. First of all, ET hot garbage. But that game sucks. And the controllers were absolute trash. And I totally agree with that. I had a box of joysticks that were just broken joysticks.
Yep.
And we knew, because we had dogs and stuff like that, we knew which ones were good and which ones weren't, because our dogs had chewed the tops off of like the broken ones. We were like, oh no, that one has too many teeth marks. It's not a good one. So we would pull out, the good ones. We had a bunch of those, the red and black one that Wolf showed in the original episode, and the little white button on top, which would
Yeah.
only work like 50% of the time.
Yep.
And you were just like, so you sit there and you're like, oh, okay, I shot once. And, it was, but it was all part of the experience, right? And I mean, if you had any experience with the tape deck games too, you had to wait like 20 minutes for one of those games to load because it had to play through a tape. It was insane. And, but I've gone back. I've played those games emulated. I have them on the Megacade back there. And with legit controls, a lot of those games are fun. And Pac-Man's garbage, but ET and ET is garbage too. But there's a few good games in there, and I will go back and play them. And all of that, those sounds, those graphics, all of that stuff just calls to memory these really fun times and parties and whatnot. So anyway,
the ones that I find going back and playing, because when I say I don't go back and play Atari, that's not 100% true, but the ones that I go back and do play, it's going to be 7800. It's going to be that version. Or if there's something that's on 7800, a lot of times I'm playing it on MAME, right? The actual version. So I don't necessarily, and I don't have that nostalgia as much, again, because like I said in the first episode, it wasn't my main system. It was more like, hey, I'm over at my friend's house. This is what we got. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I smell what you're stepping in. So what do you think, Wolf?
So I brought this down. I was upstairs, and around 9:15 I brought down one of it's an Ambernick, and
Oh
it
yeah, it's an
has
Ambernick, yeah.
JC's software in there. It's a Tracade Pocket. It's a 15,000 games. And before about 45 minutes before I got on, I went back to do some research because I did think I was a little harsh, even though I still stand by a lot of what would not only I said, but what I heard here, because a lot of what we remember is the bleeps and the boops and the nostalgia, and like Eric, you spending time with your father and collecting and playing together. I mean, those are memories, right? That's what it's all about. And those are the positive memories I have about the system. But as a gamer, I'm not going to try to find a TV that has a coaxial and hook up the actual hardware and play on the shit joysticks. But I will do what you said, Eric, and I did go back and I did play a lot of the Atari 2600 games, and you know what? It was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. A lot of those games play a lot better, like using a better joystick. So like the D-pad and stuff worked really well on the Ambernick. But
What I will, yeah.
No, go ahead.
What I was gonna say is like, so you may not like the Atari. I like the Atari, but I also understand that it's associated with really positive memories, and a lot of that isn't system related. So if I was to play it unbiasedly, then I would be like, these aren't the best games. But I feel like you have to respect what the Atari was. Because what JC said too was that really this was one of the, well, not the first, but one of the first systems that was like, my kids don't have to go to the arcade all the time. And here's a system that can kind of bring that experience home a little bit. So, it was like, you may not enjoy it, and I totally understand that, but definitely you have to respect it, even if you don't like it, like just because of what it represented, right?
Yep. Well, I remember I said, like, if you call yourself a retro collector and you don't have an Atari with how cheap and stuff they are, I still say it's one that's super easy to buy for. Um, but like you said about your positive memories and that making you biased, I don't think that makes you biased any different than most people have bias on systems that they grew up playing. So I don't think that's weird, and I don't think that's wrong or odd in any way, because I have some of those bias on just example games that some people might hate. Like I love NES Shatterhand. Some people hate that game, right? So I'm just like, it's just one of those things. It's like, all right, I mean, this is what I like. This is not what it's fine, but it's because I have those memories associated with it. I remember playing that game with my buddies. I remember staying up all night playing that stuff. So I think that's really cool though that you bring that up, because sometimes you don't think about that stuff, and you just making that statement, it brings me back to why we do these things, why we like playing retro games in general, why we get along so well, right? Just
Right.
as friends, it's
For
pretty
sure.
awesome.
So the one thing I like in conversations like this to really be careful of is the fact that you have a history that happened after Atari at this point. And in order to talk about Atari the way we really want to, you have to almost erase any evolution from it and realize the time and place we were in when that system hit. It's really easy for us to say, or for me to say, Pac-Man was garbage. But this was the first time I was able to play Pac-Man at my house in whatever form it was in. And I'm sorry, it was awesome. Until the Atari 5200 came out and I had a million more dots on the screen, and it's like, yeah, I got better real estate. This looks closer to the real Pac-Man. I'm going with this one now. And then it became garbage.
Right.
I think that Wolf had something weird though too, because he had ColecoVision at the same time. So he has a
Yeah.
very unique
Yeah.
perspective on that. So I think that's why I think Wolf is even more harsh on that, because he was able to see them back in that time, and he remembers this and this. This this right here better, ColecoVision. This one, totally
Right.
forget about that. So
But
yeah.
I am not obtuse to the fact of what JC's talking about and what Eric said. Eric hit the nail on the head. The Atari 2600 is the godfather and the OG of the retro gaming community, and much respect needs to go there. And I do respect it. I showed you guys on the last episode patches, where I was up with my dad and we were competing for high scores and sending Polaroids in and, trying to get little accolades and stuff. I mean, I think a lot of vitriol came out of that last episode, but I mean, honestly, I do like it. There are a lot of games that I liked, and I'm not sure if that really kind of transferred over. I was trying to explain about the Activision games and Freeway and Pitfall and Barnstorming and Stampede, and there's so many really cool, good games for Atari. It's ridiculous.
We got to throw Adventure in there. We haven't said that one yet.
Yes.
Just we got to throw that one in.
Yep. I mean, that
Adventure.
started it all, right, JC? I mean, that was like and we had talked about that in the last episode. That was the beginning of your kind of action adventure precursor to Zelda and all those other games.
Yeah, I mean, that game itself, I mean, there was nothing else like it.
Yep.
Not from my aspect or from what I could see at that age. And so
Yep.
just to be on, exploring something as simple as a room or a line to find a dot or key, or it brought a whole new aspect to it.
You know what? I remember that game. But I remember that game more because it reminded me of an NES game that I really, really enjoyed, which was Shadowgate.
Shadowgate. Yes.
Dude,
Yep.
and even the new Shadowgate remake is pretty stinking good. So if you guys haven't had a chance to try that out, but that's what Adventure kind of reminded me of back in the day. Just just like you said, Atari 2600, like it was the Godfather. It was how all of that stuff started. And if it wasn't there, then what would we be left with? Kind of like what was the other system we were talking about? Like it was kind of a failed system, but it was like, but it needed to kind of be there to the next thing. When I was talking about handhelds and Game Gears, like why does the Game Gear even exist when the Nomad? But it was because technology wasn't there, right? But if the Game Gear hadn't happened, the Nomad wouldn't have been there. If 2600 wouldn't have happened, who knows if anything else? I remember reading some articles, and one of them was back in the day in '77. They specifically talked about in this article I was looking at. It was that video games is a fad and it's not gonna be around, and you guys don't spend some time in there. It's just like a normal fad. Like music, certain types of music and stuff, it's not a big deal. It'll go away. And now look at that. It's like, oh, okay. If Atari would have listened to that, who knows? The developers might not. People would have stopped making games, and it might have just ended right there. And so, I mean, Atari gets mad respect for that for sure.
But
It was.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just gonna say it was that mentality that the reason Atari made the wood grain system, right? Because they wanted it to be an appliance like furniture, and they were like, everyone's gonna have this, and it needs to look like furniture, so we're gonna release it like that.
It's true.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, let's take that a step further. Not only furniture, but this system wasn't made necessarily for kids.
That's right. Yeah.
It was made for the gangsters, the grown-ups. They sat in those rooms with the system sitting there smoking, drinking, and just people being amazed at, oh gosh, man, you could do that. You could actually jump on that thing and fly over this pit of alligators and come off of it. Oh, we're gonna watch this for the next 2 hours. And it was a culture change, honestly, at home.
They also knew that the adults who had the money, the kids didn't have no money. So they were
Right.
smart about that stuff. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, this is not kiddie. That's why when we were showing some of the packaging, remember that Wolf? Like this one looks like Chuck Norris, and there's this hot chick next to him.
Yeah.
Or it's like
Yeah.
they knew what they were doing. They knew who they were selling to.
Sure.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
Atari had adult
Yes.
video games too.
It did.
Custard's Last.
Oh,
Hey,
Custer's Revenge.
hey.
Oh my
Feed 'em and
god,
eat 'em.
it's so
Amen.
terrible.
Yeah.
Amen.
So I don't know. JC, something you said resonated with me, and I do a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of times I spit stuff out of my mouth, and that's that ADD. It's not going through the old censor. But you said something important, and that is we need to look at Atari in a vacuum and its importance for that time period, and not to kind of look with eyes, you know what I mean, like today in 2023 and poop on it because the graphics are so horrible, because the graphics were probably cutting edge at that time, right? So you have the Odyssey, you have the Atari 2600, you have the Fairchild, you have the Intellivision, you have the ColecoVision, you have all these game systems, you have the Pong system. All of this stuff is kind of, dominating that time period and everybody's attention for their dollars. And it was really super important because it and it was that step above the Odyssey. And and it's like Dan said on the last episode, the third party support was insane. You had unlicensed games, you had homebrews, you had, like Eric said, like different cartridges and companies I never heard of. And that was the cool thing about Atari, right? So I mean, if you're looking at it like that, especially from a gamer perspective, then you gotta just give tons and tons of respect for that system.
Was the Vectrex at the same time, or was that later?
I think that was in the same time towards the end of that. It was like a 4-year period
Yeah.
that all those systems
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
So I think Vectrex was like towards the end of those, but it was in that same. You're right. Yeah.
The Vectrex was awesome.
I had one of those. I loved that.
I have it right there. I'm looking at it. It's right
That's
there.
awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
Yep.
Okay, so all right, JC. So Wolf and I already gave our views and scores based upon how we normally grade for retro collecting. That's what this is all about. It's about nostalgia, remembering, but we're gonna narrow it down for a retro collector that's just getting into retro collecting. Give us some grades, buddy. What do you think?
You're gonna have to give me a little bit bigger of a scale on that
Okay.
that type of grading. Help me there.
So if for a retro collector that has never played Atari and they're getting into collecting other things, they've played some Super Nintendo, they've played some Genesis, they've played some stuff based upon the availability of games, the price of the games, the amount of good games, the overall hardware, what would you say grade either from A to F? Well, actually there's S level too now. We have S tier, which is at the bottom. So out of that grading scale from A to S tier, what would you grade it? And look at this, all objective. Just this is your opinion, and
Right.
that's what it is. I'm still going to stand by mine, and because I agree with where it is, even though it's we've already talked about why the Atari is actually a great system as well. But does that help a little more, JC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. From my perspective, and strictly from my eyes, Atari is going to get the same letter it starts with.
Mhm.
It has to be one of your mainstays as a collector, because if you're going to collect retro, you literally have to know where you came from. There's no way you cannot. You cannot speak to anybody who's a collector or a gamer on anything if you can't tell me about Pac-Man, if you can't tell me about Pitfall, these are things that we didn't just play them; we studied them.
Mm-hmm.
There was an entire aura that you had about you just to be able to speak that language with the next person, and to throw that really to the wayside with anything else. If you started anywhere, you started with Atari. And that's just been, you look at the amount of movies Atari has made cameos in, even up until now. There's no way to get around it. One of my favorite movies of all time right now, um, being Ready Player One. How many games were referenced in that particular movie, all to go all the way back
Mm-hmm.
to one game on one system played by one person? And that meant everything to him as a collector in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time we saw him as a child, he wasn't playing Coleco, he wasn't playing 5200 or anything. He was Atari, a couple of games spread around him, a tab, and he's good.
Mm.
That was just the moment. So you've got to go with, you really got to have Atari on your list pretty high, and actually kind of like Wolf was saying, you got to get in there, you got to play some of that stuff and just really kind of get a feel of where you were at that time, or where gaming was at that time, and how much it really contributed to what we have now.
I like what you said a lot, JC, and actually, it triggers in me something that is kind of a scary thought. If people don't have the mindset that you just talked about, this system is going to die and be gone forever. Because the kids nowadays, if they don't listen to someone like you that has the experience and given that perspective on that stuff, it's going to die. It's going to be gone. Like, people won't talk about Atari games anymore just because they didn't grow up with the great stories that Eric gave us of remembering his dad falling asleep to that. It's like almost like therapy in a lot of ways with the sounds and stuff. So um, that's super deep for me. So thanks, JC. That's great. And then for anybody else out there, all 5 or 6 of you that are watching this, the what he just said is very, very important. I think for me personally is that people understand that retro gaming is for everyone, and we can't lose sight of some systems because that's just like anything else. Once the technology and the memories are gone, who's going to carry it on? So thanks, JC. I appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, Eric, what's your thoughts, my man?
I'm gonna have to agree a lot with JC. Mostly for the same reasons. Understanding where it came from, but also I'm gonna say that uh, if you're, I don't know a lot about retro collecting. I wish I had the space and money for it, and I would totally do it. But the Atari, I feel like is, and maybe Wolf, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Is a good place to maybe start because stuff is relatively cheap. There are a few gems out there that you may come across, and
Definitely.
if you can get your hands on those, that would be an amazing for a collection. Hardware, you can come up with some really weird third party controllers and stuff like that are out there. There are ones that maybe there's only 10 in existence or something, and you might find something like that. I don't know how to actually go, like, I mean, unless you're going to like estate sales or something like that. I don't know how to like go game hunting like that for Atari games anymore. But I
Flea
would say,
markets, yard
yeah,
sales. Yep.
yeah,
Clean
stuff
outs,
like
house
that.
Estate
clean outs.
sales, in eBay too. eBay is another one. You just got to be careful
Right.
for the forgeries. But then again,
Yeah.
if you want originals, then you got to just be careful.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna say is, like, from a retro collector point of view, it might be a really good place to start because it's relatively cheap and you will come across those gems. But if you want to enjoy the games to play, I'm gonna say do what Wolf did and emulate it because the control is better. And
Mhm.
but definitely from a collector standpoint, I feel like it's valuable. And to keep the memory alive, like what Larson said.
Can I add an addendum? And, hearing Eric and JC, that's something I'm not ignorant, right? And I think in the last episode, I got carried away with like the humor and stuff. I mean, I, an
My bad.
S plus. Yeah. I mean, and S was not S tier like today, the way I was saying on the last episode.
S
It was
tier.
poopy caca plus. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna revisit my grade after hearing what everybody said, and I'm gonna say a C. I feel like I'm right in the middle of where I was last episode and hearing JC and Eric today, because they brought up such good valid points that I'm willing to meet in the middle. I think I would say on all the reasons we said, retro, collectability, all that stuff, I'd give it just an average grade. And because I still keep some of my views from last episode, but I definitely see what you guys are saying, so I'm gonna raise it up to the midway point for me.
Yes, that's a win in my
Appreciate
book.
that.
Yeah, you shifted part of us. But for me,
Right.
again, I'm gonna go back. What I said is like emulation, great, but if you're gonna actually collect the hardware for retro game, it's not something you're gonna go back and play most likely. It's just that's
Right.
why I'm still gonna be right at that D. D for Dantron, just because emulation, yes, play that all day. But as far as collecting games that you're actually gonna play it for or get it to play, I don't see you playing those. Now, what you guys talked about getting it, and you might play a few, but a lot of times it's just for nostalgia. It's going to sit up on a shelf and it's going to look sexy, and you're going to be able to pull it out and talk about it. You're going to lick it. You're going to smear it across your face every once in a while. But that's really the way that I see the older 2600. But I see everything that you're talking about, and I agree with you guys. And I just want to say thank you very much for coming and hanging out and allowing us to do this. What was that? We were episode 9 last time, so this is going to be a 9.5. So
Right.
I just really appreciate you guys taking the time and actually coming on here and allowing us to have these conversations. It's not my way or the highway. It's cool that we can come together and we can speak as friends and just with a love of gaming. And I just want to say thanks to all of you guys.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thanks for
And
having me.
I'd love to do this again. I definitely want to keep, the kind of the format we have, but I think every now and then to sprinkle in a panel discussion for gamers to get together and talk about games and systems and collecting, I think would be a neat thing to do. Yeah, basalt, right?
Mhm.
Right off the hand. But there's something cool about this because it's just like the retro law episodes, but it's even better because you add in a couple more friends and you just kind of get right down to the nitty gritty and you just really just start eviscerating whatever topic you're going to discuss gaming wise. And I'd love to do this again, at length and in a topic that we could all enjoy.
It's coming soon, Wolf. Remember, the next one we want to do. So, and you guys will definitely get invites. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. So,
Oh, what
I'm not spoiling it. If you don't remember right now, we'll talk about it later.
okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right. So,
I tell you what, but
Go ahead.
before you go any further, I would like to say this. I thank you for having this panel, and I don't want to get away from a very important thing that just happened. We have 4 people here who all have very different opinions, and nobody's going to kill each other because the opinions are different.
Yeah.
It's all respect, and that's
Yeah.
the biggest part of this. So hey, if any of us have any kids who are watching this is what we're asking you to do in today's world. This is literally what we're asking you to do, because hey, we all don't like ET, so we do have a
Common
There's
enemy.
some
Collaborative
common ground there.
common ground.
Yeah.
That's good. Well stated, JC. Well stated.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks again. Any of you guys got any last little plug that you want to throw out there? I'll make sure I link in the description to your guys' stuff, of course. But feel free.
JC, go.
Hey, We're still running tracheids left and right. Have this nice little easy one right here. One of the second most portable things you can actually put in your pocket. You've got your laptop with you at all times. Guaranteed. Plug it in, click one executable, and have all the fun you can for the next 10 hours. I promise you couldn't play through everything if you wanted to.
Yep.
One of the best, one of the cheapest ones you can have, and it's like I said, I don't have to speak on it. There are other people who actually have one that can speak on it for.
Yes.
It'll sell itself. Yes.
I had one, but it busted. But I could speak to the other one. I don't know if you're still doing that one too, the Go.
Yes, we're still doing the Go, but we're
Okay.
doing the Go upon request.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, so I run a company called Silk Systems. We have silksystemsgaming.com. We do all of your solid state storage. We even have an external solid state drive that would be a good home for a Traycade, maybe. Stuff like that. So I sell that. I also have a YouTube channel, Problem Solved with Eric, and for regular round the house repairs. And I have my All Things Megacade series, which talks about retro gaming and gaming on that machine back there. And modifications and whatnot. But yeah, that's what I got.
Right on, guys. Wolf, you want to send us out of here?
Guess what? I'm here to plug nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing to plug. I have no website.
Hair
I have
plugs.
no social media. I have no life other than hanging with my friends and playing some video games. So, as always, I ask very kindly, if you haven't, go on to Dantron69K, his website. He's constantly doing stuff. He just did a what do you call it? A live playthrough with Arcade Adam on Dead Containment using the gun for IRs, which was cool. And he's got crazy series like the Resident Evil where he uses the chainsaw controller and he's got a chub cam and he plays through
The OG that did it, by the way, because now there's like 3 or 4 other dudes.
Yeah, they
that are
copied.
doing it.
Yeah,
They
I know.
definitely
That's
did.
okay. That's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Haters.
Give the man a like and a subscribe.
Thank
Right.
you.
Come out.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
yep,
you.
yep.
And again, to everybody, thanks for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate you all here. And until next time, later.
See ya.